Hi there, and thanks for joining me on today's episode about how to raise baby chicks. My name is Matt Van Eidert, and I am here with you every day for the next 16 weeks, showing you how to raise baby chicks from day olds until they're healthy layers. I'm also the founder of the website Pampered Chicken Mama, and we have a line of layer feeds and herbal treats for backyard chickens and Chick Starter, which has inspired this video series. So I thought a really good topic for today's video would be a very common question I get. These all seem to be very common questions, but I do tend to get these questions a lot. And it is how to tell if my baby chicks are too cold or too hot, or if they're like at the happy medium, right? So it's really critical to make sure that your chicks are at the right temperature at the right stage of their life. When they're day olds, you really want the brooder to be about 99.5 to 100 degrees. And then every week that they are alive thereafter, you want to reduce the temperature in the brooder by 5 degrees until it's about 75 degrees in the brooder. This is really critical for them to stay healthy. If they're too cold, they won't eat. If they're too hot, they get dehydrated. So maintaining an adequate temperature in the brooder is really important. Now, to tell if they're too hot or too cold is actually super simple. If they're too hot, you'll see them move away from the heat source, and they also might start cheeping loudly. If they're too cold, you'll see them huddling in front of or underneath the heat source, and they won't be moving around. Chicks that are comfortable temperature-wise and that are healthy and happy, you should see them sleeping some, you should see them wandering around the brooder some, you should see them interacting with each other, eating, drinking. If they're not doing that, then you kind of have to figure out why, and the temperature might be one reason why. Some other indicators that the temperature is either too hot or too cold is if you have baby chicks and they're cheeping very, very loudly. And we're talking like a shrill, panicked, or very sort of insistent cheep. This lets you know in the first place that something isn't right. But usually I found with baby chicks, there's usually only a few reasons why they cheep very loudly. And it's either they're lonely, the temperature's not right in the brooder, or they're hungry, or they're thirsty and they don't have food or water. So if they have food or water, if they're with the other chicks and you hear a lot of cheeping, it's usually some sort of ambient temperature issue. Now, another way that you can tell if your chicks are too hot is if you see them panting, or if you see them laying on their side and looking distressed. And we had this happen once when we used heat lamps. We don't use heat lamps anymore. This was when we used to use heat lamps. It turned out that the temperature in the brooder was 145 degrees, which is enough to bake any chick. It should never, ever, ever get to be that temperature. And that's another reason why we don't use heat lamps. It's really hard to regulate the temperature in the brooder. It tends to get too high. So if you see your baby chicks sort of going to the other side of the brooder or fanning out around the heat source, it means the heat source is probably too hot. If you see them laying on their side, if you see them panting, your chick is about to be in physical distress, and I would remove them from the brooder immediately until you start to see them return to normal. Like they start to walk around again, they start to interact with other chicks normally, that kind of thing. And then what I would do is I would keep a thermometer in the brooder to make sure that it never gets that hot again. Other signs that your chicks are too cold are huddling together and just generally kind of like looking miserable. So an example of this is one night we had a heat source on the brooder, but some chicks somehow managed to get out. So when I walked in to check on them in the middle of the night, they were in a corner, they were standing together huddled, and their shoulders, like their feathers were hunched, their shoulders were hunched, their wings were hunched, I guess. They were just generally looking miserable. They were huddled together, and it was really just obvious that they were not physically happy. So it was really obvious it was too cold anyways, because it was really cold outside. The heat source and the temperature in the brooder was fine, but inside, they weren't in that area, it was just too cold outside. So it was obvious that they were going to be too cold anyways, but that's an indicator that if you start to see that behavior and you're not sure if it's too hot or too cold, let the chicks tell you, and that's an indicator that they're not physically comfortable. So that's today's video. I hope it has helped you. I hope it's kind of explained how to tell if your chicks are too hot or too cold. Just remember that you want the temperature in the brooder to be 95 degrees the first day of their life, day 1, and then for the first week. And then every week thereafter, you reduce the temperature by 5 degrees until it's about 75 and or they are fully feathered. Once they're fully feathered, they really don't need a heat source anymore. Some signs that your chicks are too hot or too cold are huddling away from the heat source or huddling underneath the heat source, huddling together, cheeping loudly, seeming in some sort of physical distress. If you've liked this video, please go ahead and leave me a comment below. You can also leave a comment below if you have a question about baby chicks, and I will go ahead and try and answer it. Please do consider subscribing, and if you are watching me on YouTube, please go ahead and click the notification bell so that you can be notified about when we upload videos, which is every day for the next 16 weeks, as I show you how to raise baby chicks from day olds into their layers. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow. Bye!